Hi everyone, this is Tom from NoCode Shorts, where I showcase NoCode projects from all over the world. And today with me is Beck, who built a Deezign Figma-to-Bubble converter. Beck, please introduce yourself and tell us more about this project.
Hey, my name is Beck. I'm primarily a Bubble developer. I've been a full-time Bubble developer for about 3 years now. Before that, I was in the Air Force, and then I did some sales, decided to get my MBA, and then realized none of that was fun, and decided to get NoCode. So, in today's call, I wanted to demonstrate a product I built for myself. It's called Deezign. It's a Figma-to-Bubble converter. And like I mentioned, I built it for myself because in my full-time job, I have a Figma designer on staff, and he designs the products we build, and I go and implement it into Bubble. And I got really tired of doing that. Like it just wasn't fun. It's not mentally stimulating just to sit there at Figma and then copy and paste everything one by one, just rebuilding it. So I built Deezign to just instantly convert it, and it's made my life so much easier. And I think a lot of other people like it too. So I'm really looking forward to demonstrating that today. So we can start from the landing page. You come here, design instant Figma-to-Bubble conversion, and if you want, you can check out our video. But I really tried to make this as minimal as possible because at the end of the day, the service is you find a Figma design you like, you install our plugin, and you click convert, and then you access the converted Figma file in your Bubble editor using our Chrome extension, right? So when you get started, a lot of people might say, well, I'm a Bubble developer, but I don't really know Figma. Like, I don't think this is for me. And I push back on that because, like, one thing that I realized with Figma is there's so many UI kits out there that are completely free, and they're beautifully designed out. They have templates for all kinds of applications. Like you can find an Airbnb clone, you can find a Apple landing page clone, or you can find a full-on SaaS clone, right? So I started populating this page with some that I found that work really well with Deezign. And you can look through them, but we'll start here with one of my favorites, these two right here. They're both pretty equal. One of them, they're all based off of a design system called ShadCN and ShadCN-UI. And one of them, I think, just has more components than the other one, but let's just jump into it. So I'll click this one. I think I like this one better. And I'll say share this tab instead. Here we go. So then I'll click open in Figma. My own team's fine.
Right now we are moving to Figma, right, with this design.
Yeah, exactly.
And
So
to underline the fact these kits, these UI kits are completely free to use. I mean, a lot of them free to use.
Yeah. And there are paid ones that you can find on Figma itself, or like Gumroad has some. But honestly, the free ones have been great for me. I've paid for one. I paid for Untitled UI. I think it was like $500, and I think it was worth it. But in the grand scheme of things, I've only used it for a couple of months, and then I just moved on to a free one. So maybe it wasn't worth it. But you can look here on the left side. If you're not familiar with Figma, it's kind of like your navigation through all the sections. And we can look through and see, all right, there's dashboards, there's cards in here, like a task management tool. Let's see, this one's a playground. I think it's mimicking like OpenAI's past playground mode. But let's find authentication. And let's say I want to create a sign-up page.
Yeah, this is where we usually start, right, with the sign-up page.
Exactly. So I have a couple of quick shortcuts, but I'll go through it right from the beginning. So at this point, if you've the first time signed up for Deezign, when you install the plugin, you'd access it right here. You click launch, and what it would ask you is for your authentication token, and you get that through your dashboard. And once you enter your authentication token, that's how my Bubble backend knows who you are, and it could match the connection so that you could access it in the Chrome extension. But here, what I want to do is I want to mark the sign in with email as a button. Because in Figma, there is really no indicator for what's an input, what's a button, what's a multi-line, because it's just all groups and texts in the grand scheme of things compared to Bubble, because the designer doesn't really need to make it an input field, right? It just needs to be a text and a group. So the GitHub one, we'll mark that as a button as well. And then this, we'll mark that as an input. And then I think I can make this a button. And I think that's about it. So then we'll go back to convert. And then I'll click on the whole container right here, authentication light. And I want to highlight one major thing here. So one of the biggest issues with first-time Figma users and using Deezign is that they'll try it out on Deezign and it will not work. It'll be terrible, and they'll be like, "Oh, this tool doesn't work," right? Well, there's actually a specific functionality that needs to be required in the Figma file that has become standard since like 2000, I think 2021, I think auto layout came out. And basically what auto layout is Figma's version of when we got Flexbox and Bubble. So if you guys remember, we got columns and rows, and then before, what was it, 2022 when we got that in Bubble? Before that, you had to use the XY coordinates. Everything was fixed container. I would have to use a calculator every time I was in the Bubble editor to figure out how to add padding. So if you don't use auto layout in Figma,
it wasn't that long time ago, right? Just
it feels like forever though. If I ever go into an old app and I see that, I'm like, I don't know how to use this anymore. Like, I don't even want to. I'll just read.
And the same is with Figma, right? Some of the layouts just don't use auto layout, and without auto layout, it won't work.
Yeah, and you can tell if it's auto layout or not just by looking at the container on the left side. We see I have authentication light, the blue section, and you can see that it has those three parallel lines. That's telling me it's a row for authentication, and then underneath the container, it has those three, I think those are vertically stacked lines, and that's telling me it's a column, right? But also in the Deezign plugin, you could see number of nodes. So when I convert this will create theoretically 30 some elements in Bubble, and about 89% of them use auto layout. So that's good, right? What I don't want to see is 0%, 12%, 20%. That's telling me that there's a lot of fixed layout size elements. And then as well, there's responsive height and width. So this design, about 85% of it has used the hug or stretch functions. Like, it's just standard CSS, right? Versus you can see here on the right side though, it says 1334. So this is the one that doesn't have it. And what Deezign tries to do is it tries to convert every single Figma style CSS value to Bubble. So if this is set to 1334, we'll see it when we convert it. It'll output as 1334. So don't be surprised that it's not responsive right off the bat. It's because the design you selected might have built it that way, right?
So to summarize that, if you have a good design in Figma, it will be converted with, very well, right? If the design is bad, it's crappy, it doesn't have auto layout, some fixed width or some on, the same will be converted to Bubble.
That's exactly right. Yeah, it's kind of like garbage in, garbage out, right? Like if it's there's just such a level of abstraction I can do to a point where then I'm just modifying the design. But let's just click convert to Bubble.
Yep.
And it says done here, and then I'll switch over to an editor I opened up. And
so the only thing you need to do in Figma, you need to point out the elements, mark if it's button or not, but you only need to do it once, and then click convert to Bubble.
Exactly, yeah. So on the Figma file, I'm saving in your local copy, like basically at a state level that persists, that you marked it as a button or an input. So if you ever come back to the same files, for example, if I'm working on a project at work, I just mark all of the reusable components that my designer builds as buttons and inputs, and then it auto converts it every time he uses a new design with it.
So if you have a design system in Figma, you just mark it once and then reuse it. Right?
Exactly. Yep. Yeah, absolutely. So now that I'm in here, what I did was I have two options to open Deezign. If you have the Chrome extension installed, you'll see at the bottom left here next to your regular Bubble navigations, the icon, but you can also open it just through the extension. And when you open it up, first time, it'll just ask you to log in if you're not already logged in. And then it will show you all of the components that you have converted, right? And if you want to clean it up, you can click archive. So I click archive this one or archive that one. And then I can also favorite stuff if I want to save them. And Tom, thanks again for that shout out. Super helpful. So I click copy.
Favorite stuff is right now my favorite, and the ability to change the name.
I appreciate it.
Voila.
There we go. So now let's take a look here. As I mentioned, it tries to copy everything perfectly, right? So 1334 width, 800 height, right? And if we go back to the Figma file, that's what we had here. So share the stat instead, and authentication, you see here 1334 and 800. So it's really trying its best to map it one-to-one. But let's come back to Bubble and let's take a look. So now this is an input field, right? That converted. This is a button. And then it also has buttons with icons. And I just set it to be a default icon for every conversion because a lot of icons that you'll find in Figma designs are slightly modified by the designer. They might take a hero icons library and then modify it to their needs, change the SVG a little bit, and then rename it. So mapping it is just it's not worthwhile in the grand scheme of things because you're never going to find the exact one. But let's see if I could find a GitHub logo. No, I think Feather had it, right?
Yeah, I think in the Feather it was. Yeah, it was.
Yeah, there we go. So there's that, and then I'll just do some minor changes, like I will make this not fixed width, not fixed height. I'll make it stretch, and then make this.
Of course, you need to have some kind of a basic knowledge of how the layout and design works in Figma, in Bubble, right? To tune up the things, but it speeds up your works in a very pretty way.
It's definitely a helper for an experienced Bubble developer. I wouldn't say it's a tool for a new Bubble developer who doesn't really understand Bubble and how to use it correctly, right? So here we go. So just in a couple of minutes, most of it was me blabbering. We created a sign-up page, right? I could type in here. I click sign in with email. Obviously, you have to create your workflows.
Yeah, of course, because it's only for the design, right? But
yeah,
the design part, I think it's the most time-consuming in Bubble. Every time I build something, the most time-consuming part, is switching from Figma to Bubble and moving to design before the design, right? Right now I'm using the design to speed up more work. But to be honest, I often use it not to copy the whole pages, but only the elements and to build the library of elements in Bubble. What's your advice on that? To copy the whole pages or the elements?
No, I do the same thing actually. So let me click share this tab instead, and let me see if I can figure out how to go back to my files. And I'll show you. See if I can find in my recents a file that I use a lot. So this was the untitled UI version that I paid for, and 99% of the time, if I'm building a new project, I might start here because untitled UI. So I'm not affiliated with them. This is no way an ad, but it's just such a complete package. The guy who built it did a really good job.
It has everything, right?
Yeah, it has everything, right? Whatever I'm looking for, I'll probably find it here and I'll be able to copy it. So let's look at, let's say pagination, right? I need to add pagination to a repeating group. I'll just come here and copy it. And then I might make it like small tweaks to match my styling or my color palette, but I don't have to sit there and figure out what padding I'm going to use, what spacing I'm going to use. I could just find one that I like this one looks cool, and I'll just convert it, right? So let's just do that. Click plugin, and then I'll click convert, and it's done. And then I can just come back to share this tab instead, and let's just delete this. And if I had a repeating group, this would be more helpful, but and there we go. So now I have pagination, right? So that's definitely the value of it. I definitely don't recommend it.
Looks like magic, but it really works.
Yeah. I definitely don't recommend it for full pages because a lot of times, like I'll give you a good example. A lot of times, like landing pages, for example, will have non-auto layout components to make it look prettier. And so this one's a good example right here. So this right here, you'd assume this is just an image, right? Like that's how I would build it in Bubble. But when you actually look into the Figma file, it's containers that are built. It's not an image. It's just they're rotated, maybe 15, 20 degrees and placed like that. And it's probably fixed layout. Yep, right here. So it's fixed layout. So if I click it and I click launch, I would get 0% auto layout. Like it's telling you don't do it. I have a warning sign like this won't work.
You still can do it, but it just won't work. It will copy something to Bubble, but it will be a crap.
Yeah.
From my experience, I use Deezign for dashboards for the backends, not for the landing pages, because as you mentioned, the landing pages are often designed to look beautiful, but not in terms of auto layout and how the design should be built, right?
Exactly. Yeah. Something that's like more application specific, not website specific. I think it's much better because it's pretty straightforward. Like, one thing I haven't cracked is repeating groups and tables. Tables is kind of hard just because Bubble, I never know when they're going to change tables again because they make minor tweaks. And like there used to be a time where you couldn't even add styling to tables, but I think you can now, like add a style variable. But the repeating groups have been the one that I've been trying really hard to figure out, because if you come here, most likely you'd either do this as well, your only choices are table or repeating group and Bubble. But to place this without a repeating group, you can see here, these are all columns.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
It's not like
When
in a
you copy the
repeating
whole
group.
table, it will just
Yeah,
copy the columns, and you need to manually adjust it. Yeah.
exactly. Yeah. Like you can't select a row, but in Bubble, it would be a row, right? So that's one challenge. And then the second challenge is the moment I paste a repeating group into your editor, you're going to get errors because Bubble's looking for a data type. And what I really want to do is not show errors, right? I didn't want to freak somebody out as soon as they paste and then they have like 3 errors in their editor. So yeah, there's some components that it just I haven't figured out yet.
Yeah, but as you mentioned, I mean, this is to help. Definitely, it's much, much, much better than the built-in Figma-to-Bubble converter, which
Yeah.
just simply doesn't work. I think that it was
Mm-hmm.
a part of the previous design, the fixed part, and it just doesn't work. So this type of converter is much, much better, but it's a helper, not it won't do the whole work for you. But what's interesting that this Figma to Bubble converter design was actually built with Bubble. I mean, the backend and the whole uh, the extension part. I mean, the design, the layout, and so on. The extension is not in Bubble. I mean, the code,
Mm-hmm.
but the whole
Mm-hmm.
backend of extension is in Bubble, right?
Yeah, so partially. So there's actually like 3 different backends I have. So the backend of managing users, managing the conversions, mapping and everything of the final products. That's in Bubble, right? So
Let's
my
jump
page
into
is
the
in Bubble.
editor and see how it
Yeah,
looks like.
let's jump right in. So let me go to the editor. So this is my Bubble editor for design, and the application, the UI is pretty straightforward, just like a regular SaaS. I built it with design. After I built design, I launched it, and well, I didn't launch it. I used it internally for myself, and then I built the layout. So the landing page, this right here. I wonder if I could find this from Untitled UI, but these components are all from Untitled UI, right? I just copied them over. I copied the spacing and images, and I just added my own images to this, right? And then the front, the dashboard page. So if we go over here, yep, this one, I think I used the ShadCN library. There was a couple of like dashboard pages, and I used that one. But really, where the magic happens is in backend workflows. So let's go to main, and basically these 5 workflows control the creation, assignment, and then lastly the archiving of conversions from Figma to Bubble. And really, what's happening here is in Figma, I have a Figma plugin, right? And the Figma plugin takes in the your selected design. When you click convert, I have a TypeScript that in the Figma plugin, some TypeScript that formats the node, the Figma design, to a specific structure that I'm looking for, that I then send to my serverless backend. So I'm using Cloudflare in this example, and it sends the Figma file, the selection basically, in a JSON structure that I can then easily manipulate in my Cloudflare worker, right? And for all the Bubble developers, I might have lost you there. Please, like, listen, trust me on this. I didn't know 99% of this stuff before I started, so I'll explain how I got there. But after my Cloudflare worker receives the information from Figma, and what I'm receiving there also is your token, right? So I know who sent it to my Cloudflare. And then I'm also receiving like a validation of, are you a free user or a premium user? Are you able to send this much nodes in a conversion? Because the free user plan, I only have it limited to a certain number of nodes. But
so this is
then
being
on the
controlled. This is being controlled by the serverless backend without touching
exactly.
Bubble yet, right? Without touching Bubble yet.
Correct. Yeah. Well, there are actually some touch points with Bubble. So my serverless backend also has a connection to Bubble real time. And when you click, for example, when you enter your token, that's when it validates. It it goes to Cloudflare, and then from Cloudflare, it goes to Bubble and says, hey, does this person have access to design? And then Bubble says, yep, and it sends it back, and then you can proceed with it, right? And then every time you click convert.
Example, yeah, the perfect example of how you can combine code and Bubble and serverless backend together to create a meaningful product. I mean, without even know how to code, because so how did you build the Figma plugin or this serverless backend, right? You've mentioned not for the Bubble developers not to worry about it. Can you tell a few words about it?
Yeah, so I took everything. This was not a project that I planned out. So it was a lot of figuring out as I go. At first, I wanted to see if, okay, can I create a JavaScript function that can take a Figma design and convert it to Bubble? And when I started looking into how Figma stores their elements, at the end of the day, it was just JSON that had styling, and then it was nested with all its children, right? So I could have, if I have a sign up page, I have the main container, just like in Bubble, let me just pull up on the index here. At the end of the day, it's all structured. It's nested like this, right? I have the container, and then I have the children, yada, yada. And then each one has its own children, and then each one has its own styling. And the funny thing is, Bubble does it the exact same way. When you inspect the Bubble editor page and you go to, I think, application or data, I forget what tab in the inspector is, and you look for Bubble element clipboard, that is what you currently have copied in your Bubble's editor, right? And it's just a JSON of the element you copied. So I was like, okay, these look very similar. They just have different terminologies. All I have to do is match them. So I first started just
Figma JSON into the Bubble JSON, right?
That's exactly right.
Two formats, right?
That's exactly right. Yeah. So then I was like, all right, how do I do this? So I just spent a couple of days where I went through every single element type in Bubble, like the default elements, like buttons, text, inputs, and I went through every single possible value you can modify. So container layout, column, container alignment, and I clicked each one. And what I did was I would copy from the inspector and see every time I modified something, what was I changing, and then what were the possible values. So basically, I created a mapping of all of these keys. Container layout is the key, and then the values column, right? So obviously, I could just look at this and say fixed, align to parent, row, and column. But I wanted to see what the actual terminology was in the JSON. So I did that. I created a library. I think in total, I might have been like 150 or 200 different values that came out. Yeah, it's a lot. Like, you don't think it's a lot, but like every single one of these is one value, right? And then if you change background style to gradient, now you just added 5 new ones, right? So it quickly adds up. Wait, what was it? Black color. All right. So it quickly adds up. So I started doing that, and then I just asked ChatGPT. I was like, hey, I have this JSON. I want it to look like this. Give me a script. And that's where I started. So I got that script, and then obviously it has flaws. And I started learning a little bit more about JavaScript. I already had a decent knowledge of JavaScript. Like, I've made my own plugins, again, with ChatGPT, but I still tried to figure out as I went. And in the span of, I would say, like a month and a half, I was able to finish out the script that converted from Figma to Bubble. And I was like, great. Now, how do I put this in Figma? So then I had to learn that there's Figma plugins. The other way, yeah. So I spent some time just reading through Figma's docs, asked ChatGPT a lot of questions, and ultimately I was able to create a Figma plugin that you see right now. The V1 looked way worse, but I was able to create it and figure out. Then I was like, okay, how do I have Figma, my plugin, talk to this new function I have, right? Because this function is living somewhere else. I created this plugin that can export the code. I could copy it when I console log it. And then I used Cloudflare before, and I looked at Cloudflare workers, and the free plan is amazing. But for $5 a month, it's like astonishing how much, like, I understand why a lot of people hate on Bubble for the pricing for workload units, because how much Bubble charges for workload units looks absurd when you compare it to Cloudflare's cost, right? Like,
that's true. That's totally true.
I think Cloudflare, you get like millions for $5. But yeah, so I paid $5 for Cloudflare. I hosted the script there. I figured out authentication, and that's basically it.
But you also have the Chrome extension, right? So you've got you
That's right.
needed to create the Figma extension, a Chrome extension, a backend, and
Yep.
the Bubble backend. So it's a combination of a couple of technologies working together.
Yep.
And
Yep.
as I saw, we've got the backend workflows in Bubble that are talking with all these extensions, right? Or only with Cloudflare? How does it work?
Yeah. So funny you say that. I completely forgot about the Chrome extension as well. So Chrome extension itself is just an iframe of a Bubble page I have. There is just a little bit of code just to be able to render the iframe, have the button on the left side. But at the end of the day, most of the Chrome extension is in Bubble, and that was actually the hardest part, is because every time you submit approval for a first-time Chrome extension, it takes forever. And the reason it takes forever is you submit for approval, and Chrome's approval process is like multiple layers, and they don't talk to each other. So the first, like let's say I go to Team X, maybe security, whatever, they'll look at it and they'll find one issue, and they'll kick it back to you. I'm like, okay, simple issue, I'll fix it, send it back. A couple of days go by, and now it's at Team B, and Team B finds another issue, and then they kick it back. And then you're sitting there like, guys, could you just tell me all the issues at once? So I think the Chrome extension took me a month just for approval, just because it kept going back and forth and back.
Yeah, had the similar experience about my Chrome extension, that the approval process is the longest part, because they are now checking if there is no fraud, if it's safe, and so on.
That's exactly right.
I mean, most
understand
of the
why.
checks are automated, but at least it doesn't allow most of the crappy plugins or the frauds not to go into the store, which is good, right? But
because you can
for the
access a lot
developers,
of
that
information.
yeah, that's true.
So actually, the one way I was able to get it approved is I created a custom GPT that did Chrome extension Chrome violation identifier. If you need access, let me know. And what I did was I just copy and pasted all of the Chrome extension approval docs, and I fed it in there, like all the code. And then I just said, here's my Chrome extension code. Tell me where it's not going to get approved. And that's how I solved it. After I used this, I was able to get approved on the next submission. So that's pretty cool.
That's great.
Yeah. And what was your other question? Sorry, I went on a tangent.
I mean, because I saw that you showed us the backend workflows in Bubble. So the backend workflows what are they for, right? Because most of the translation from JSON to JSON is on the Cloudflare worker, right? But we're using Bubble to wrap it all together.
Absolutely. So let me demonstrate that. Go to main. All right. So this right here it creates the code, and then it sends to Cloudflare. And then, so actually, the first instance of you clicking convert, it actually comes to Bubble first, and then I send it to Cloudflare. So
from Bubble.
So yeah. So Figma sends it to Bubble. Actually, no, I'm sorry. Now I'm confusing myself. I have two separate Cloudflare workers, actually. One that just does the in-between talking between Figma and Bubble, and then one that does the conversion. So the Figma one sends it to my auxiliary Cloudflare worker that receives it and then sends it to my Bubble one, right? And I did that just to be able to add a little bit of delay if there's multiple conversions happening at the same time, not to overload Bubble, right? This is a webhook, really. This convert to Bubble, it receives information from my worker, and then it sends it back to my other Cloudflare worker that actually does the conversion, and then that Cloudflare worker, so it's step 2, then responds back with the correct JSON. And then once I capture the JSON, I just update right here. So result of step 2 is raw body text, which is fully formatted in the JSON that you're expecting when you click paste. And then afterwards, I have so this is the satellite data type that stores the JSON in my Bubble database. But then I create the searchable data type that when you open up the extension, you only see the searchable one until you click copy. Because when I was initially just showing you the satellite one, the extension quickly got really, really slow because it's pulling in the entire JSON for each item in the repeating group, right? So I use satellite data type there. But yeah, that's basically it. Then,
which makes no sense because in the extension you don't have to see the whole JSON, right? You only need it to copy.
yeah, but if you're pulling a data type, Bubble is just going to pull all of it, right? So that's the sad part. But yeah, so then it just this create code search is that searchable data type, and just makes a change to assign you the code search, and that's about it. Basically, these two workflows is the output that you see right here. It populates this field with each of your conversions.
And you are keeping a copy of all the elements that you've created in Bubble database, so you can reuse it in your designs. And right now you can mark it as favorite as well.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And I have started to initially when I was archiving, when a user clicked archive, it would hide it after like 7 days, I think. And I would just remove it from their list, but I would just store it in case somebody accidentally archived it. But now it's a good problem to have. Is I think I'm at like over 10,000 conversions, so my database is quickly getting filled up. So I have to like figure out how to either move the storage of the JSON elsewhere, or just actually start cleaning up the database because 10,000 lines with huge amounts of JSON is taking up a lot of database space.
Can you tell us about the users, about how much money are we making from it? Because you started this year or just a couple of months ago. I mean, I discovered it a couple of months ago, and I don't know if previously you were working on it, but from my perspective, it's just a couple of months ago.
Yeah, I officially launched it January 1st. I hadn't really said anything about it. There's only a couple of people that like I demoed it to just to get their opinions on. But then January 1st, I launched on Twitter, and I got like a lot of initial interest, and I was in that mode of like, oh, I'm super excited about this, and I just kept posting on Twitter about it. And it was funny, around like February, I kind of just got like tired of posting on Twitter about it, and that's exactly the same time where like then my lead generation started going down, and then it picked back up after a while with SEO and stuff like that. But it was funny to see how I had a direct impact on how much revenue I generated if the more I tweeted about it, right? But at the same time, I was like, I don't want to be that guy who's only tweeting about his product. Like I actually enjoy Twitter, especially the Bubble community, because I learn a lot. Like I met you, I've met a lot of great Bubble developers, and every single time I open up something, it's like somebody has figured out a interesting way of doing something in Bubble, right? So I didn't want to flood my Twitter with just spam about my product. But yeah, so I started in January, and I think by March I hit 1,000 MRR, and then I've basically coasted around that lane. I think right now I'm at like 1,500 MRR, and it just fluctuates around there. And really, the only marketing I do is I have Google Ads, and I might actually cancel my Google Ads because I got a lot of value out of Google Ads early, but now it's slowed down a lot where it's not worth it anymore. Like how much I'm spending versus how much I'm getting from signups from Google Ads, they don't equate to each other, right? Like actually, I think last month I didn't get any signups from Google Ads, and I spent $500, right? So it's like, oh, maybe like this, yeah. And I hired an agency too, so I have a Google Ads agency I hired because I got tired of doing it, and they charged me like $300. So a lot of my revenue is actually going to that.
Makes no sense.
Yeah, but really, I built this for myself, and I wanted to share with the community. But I also wanted to just to offset whatever expenses it has. Like I have Cloudflare, I think I paid them like in total like $10 a month, and the Bubble editor. But in the grand scheme of things, I've been really happy about its success because once users start using it and they kind of get the understanding of it, it's really low friction in the sense of I don't really have much customer support requests. And I don't, I think the main thing that I learned though was target audience. One of the mistakes I made early on was around April, I think. So up until April, my Google Ads was doing really good. I was getting return on ad spent, And I was like, okay, this is great. Like, this is just a scaling issue. The more money I get, the more I feed into Google Ads. And it's just a flywheel at that point. And then I decided to do YouTube advertising, where I just promoted a couple of YouTube shorts I made about design. And
But on
that
your own channel or on
I made a
something?
design channel. Yeah, I made a channel for
Mm-hmm.
design, and I think I spent like $20, and I got thousands of views on my shorts, and it destroyed my Google Ads. And I didn't know they would do that. But here's what happened: my Google Ads were targeted towards experienced Bubble developers, right? So the search words are Bubble UI kits or Bubble design conversion, whatever. But I had specifically removed keywords such as Bubble tutorial, right? However, the people who saw my Google ads or my YouTube ads were mostly inexperienced Bubble developers who were just learning about Bubble, and YouTube was just recommending it to them. So they saw it, and then they just looked up design, because obviously I want them to be able to look up design and show that. And they see it, they click my ad, they'd sign up, and then they would not understand how to use the tool and then just leave. But every time they clicked it, it would cost me like $1. So I was eating through my Google Ads budget within like the first 3 hours of the day, every single day. And
Okay.
it was targeting the wrong audience. Every single one of those people, like I have a huge spike in user signups around April, but my conversion rate significantly dropped because those actually weren't the right customers.
Yeah,
And
because this is what we already mentioned. I mean, if you just install design and you have no idea about the design in Bubble, the design in Figma, maybe you can have some kind of an idea of design in Figma, but if you just click copy and paste with a crappy Figma design, it will not look good, right? And
exactly. Yeah, I think there's two demographics of ideal users for me. One is an experienced Bubble developer who knows what they're doing, and they either work in an agency where they have a designer who designs in Figma, like I had, or they themselves have some Figma experience, and they can find a UI kit and go from there, right? That individual knows Bubble really well and knows Figma just enough to get around. That's ideal user number one. And then another one that I hadn't realized was designers wanting to learn Bubble. So those who are really good in Figma, but are trying to learn Bubble, I've actually had some success with them as well, because they know how to find the right Figma UI kit. They know about auto layout. They understand all that concepts. And they just want to learn about actually building the software that they're designing. And when they convert to Bubble, then they can play around and see how it outputted in Bubble and how they can then modify and build applications in Bubble. So that was surprising to me. I didn't even think about that user base, but
yeah, because as you mentioned, the Bubble has a similar logic in terms of building elements to Figma, right? I mean, they are placed in a different way, but if you are really good at Figma, you can, open the Bubble editor, and after copying designs, so this match to Figma, this match to the column, this match to the width, and so I think it's the perfect. I mean, Bubble is the perfect tool for the designers who like to build their own apps, but they lack the ability to create designs fast. And this type of tool allows them to quickly convert their designs and build beautiful apps.
Yeah, absolutely. I've actually started using Figma more myself for prototyping and then putting it in Bubble using design, because the one thing that I love about Figma is the endless layout, right? I could scroll out and then go to another page right next to it. Versus in Bubble, I have to change pages. I can't have two versions of a page in Bubble, look at it at the same time, and play with it as quickly as I can in Figma. Once I got a good understanding of Figma, I fell in love with that, because I could iterate and prototype and then find the one that I like, and then I just push it in Bubble and I have it there, versus how long it takes me to iterate in Bubble. It would take me twice as long. If you're interested in it, please try it out. Hit me up. Tom, if you want, we could do like a promo code for people who watch this video. Maybe we could put it in the comments, or in the description, but we set up something like 20% off if you watch the video and you use Tom's promo code. But lastly, I would say that there's a lot more community in Figma than there is in Bubble yet, right? Because Figma is such a bigger project. And if you're interested in finding designs Bubble has UI kits. There's lots of Chrome extensions that have UI kits. They're great. Bubble has templates, but the community in Bubble that are building that is a fraction of the community of Figma, right? So if anything, check out Figma and see the designs that are built out there, even if you don't use design, just to expand your knowledge of how to build beautiful apps, right? Because I was really good at building solid applications with great backends and great logic, but the one thing I always lacked is that design I'm just not artistic in that sense. I'm more logical. And learning about Figma and getting into it has really helped me build beautiful apps on my own without having to pay a designer or have a designer on my staff. So if anything, check out Figma, check out the free UI kits they have, educate yourself on how to build beautiful apps. And if you want to save some time, check out Deezign.